Oh, in high school, I had many great English teachers, but one of them was a Miss Risa. And Miss Risa was the type of teacher who would have a student stand up in the class and before the class answer a question. And if the student couldn't answer the question, then that student stood there all period while he or she was drilled. And many people thought it was really a cruel act. But what happened was that we mastered what Miss Risa taught us because we knew there were no options other than embarrassment.
It made me realize how good of a student I can be and how good I can write.
Because she had a passion for not only the subject she taught, but her students as well.
It's Boykin that she would never say no to an answer, like, can she do a recommendation letter?
And it was like close to midnight, and I asked her if she could do me the letter of recommendation. And we passed the date, but she and Ms. Mayfield were able to call the Scholarship Foundation, and they were able to accept the letter of recommendation.
She would say just about right is exactly wrong, which meant you either know it or you don't know it, and there's no in between. And that's what I wanted my students to accept, that let's not play around with English. You know it or you don't know it. If you don't know it, learn it. If it's not clear to you, then I need to teach it and teach it and teach it until you can master it.
I didn't know it was so many ways to speak. Ms. Boykin, anything, if a period, if a comma, if the letter was in the wrong place, if it's not perfect, she was going to say something.
But I can't look back at Ms. Boykins and ever pinpoint when she wasn't on task. And now that I'm an adult, I see why that is so important.
Okay, well, some of the stories I heard from people who were in Ms. Boykin's class, they were talking about how hard she was, even back then, because she was a stickler for grammar and writing. And they talked about how they just, so many days, they were just so stressed out by her class because she was so strict, but they talked about how they learned so much from her.
In college, we wrote a lot of papers. We wrote a lot of papers for class, so a lot of the rules of grammar and the things that she really stressed helped me out in college, and that was why I was able to graduate. And that was why I was able to at least hang my freshman year, because freshman year was tough.
And then with me, there were plenty of days where I would ask her about one grammar question, and what I thought would be 10 minutes ended up being an hour.
Because of the rules of grammar and the rules of speech that she taught us, plus the confidence she gave us, and the discipline with the vocabulary words and things like that, I was able to do well in college.
She would sit with me and she would go over everything that she thought I would need to know, and then she would answer every question that I had, even though it was after school and I know I was impeding on her time.
The California High School exit exam consists of 3 parts.
That's the test that every 10th grader takes in order to graduate high school.
To pass the California High School exit exam was 350 points. And the writing prompt, they were scored from 1 to 4. 1 being the lowest and 4 being the highest. And when the students started taking the KC exam, many of the kids were scoring 1s and 2s. And it was so funny because I was so scared to ask her. You know, she has had seniors for all these years, and I was just so afraid to ask her, Ms. Boykins, I need for you to work with the 10th graders.
And I took that class the first year and 100% passing. But it wasn't so much the 100% passing that made me feel good. It was that 11 of them scored the perfect 450.
I was already a good writer at first, but she made me better.
And that was one of my goals during that particular year, was to focus in on my well-structured teachers, well-organized teachers, more committed, strong teachers, to work with the lower level students and getting them ready for the California High School exit exam.
A teacher alerted me because they had received the scores before they came to my 4th period class. I had 4th and 6th periods. That some felt that I would be upset if they didn't get the 4, since I talked so much about let's try to make that 4, let's make that 4.
That she told me to keep the family name because my brother, my brother had his class also. He passed with a 3.5, which is the second highest score.
I called my daughter Serena and I said, listen Serena, these kids made 3.5 and 450. I'm not upset with them. But I feel bad that they've been successful and they feel they've disappointed me.
Me, I passed with a 4, and 4 is the highest score, so I believe that's what helped me.
So they came to class and we were proud.
We saw many more 3s and 4s, particularly 4 in the writing prompt on the California High School exit exam. And I think a lot of that had to do with Mary Boykin.
He really helps you how to talk. You feel me? You'll use big words and different words when you're out there in the streets. You wouldn't just use a lot of slang coming from his Boykin's class.
One of the things that just remember when I first met her was how she would talk about her sons, and how proud she was of her sons and all of her kids that had went on to play sports.
Yeah, that kind of separates you from that stereotype of being a black male in the streets, or being educated or not being educated. So the grammar and the diction that she teaches us is what will help us succeed in the next level of college.
He kind of understood what it was to be an athlete and a student athlete. The most recent comes to mind is kid Derek Woods. He got his first Division I offer in the 10th grade. He played a U.S. Army All-American game, so he was an Army All-American. He committed to the University of Oklahoma.
And she's done a wonderful job raising us as students and as young men and women.
Well, they game recognized game, as the kids say. And when somebody is preaching and sharing knowledge, especially from the literature standpoint, correcting kids' English, he really respected Ms. Boykins.
Well, since I'm going to Oklahoma on a football scholarship, she kind of gives me good advice about girls. She tells me not to mess with them too much because I get caught up and she don't want me to.
Sometimes I had to be the eyes and the ears for the parents.
She is the teacher that your parents said, if she calls me up and says that you've been acting up in class, I'm not coming up here to whoop her behind. I'm coming up here to whoop your behind.
Didn't turn in an assignment, and I play basketball, so I kind of thought that, by playing sports, I actually had a pass. She kind of would ignore it and look the other way.
I believe in following the school rules. So, should a child decide to break them, then I'm going to take whatever action is required by the school.
That she knew my mom personally, and I forgot that.
Let's say if a child does something that I disapprove of or that is not related to good conduct.
She walked across the street, told my mother that I did not complete an assignment, and had a problem with it.
I deal with that conduct at that time. I don't make that who that child is.
All of a sudden, my mother arranges for coverage in her classroom at Crozier.
I cared about my students, and while I think that I was friendly, I wasn't their buddy even then. I was their teacher. And that was a clearly drawn line. And it was respected by them, and of course it was consistent in terms of me.
And I'm hearing my mom's name get called outside, and I'm like, are they calling my mama?
I didn't mind picking up the phone and saying, look, I think you need to check this.
It yells at me so loud that I wish I would have gotten a butt whooping, because actually she embarrassed me in front of everybody.
Other times I may even say very bluntly, I don't think the child is being treated fairly in this situation. Maybe you want to look into it.
Honestly, what she did is she taught me you can't take a day off because people are still watching you even though you think they are not.
She is like a second parent. I think she understands the students emotionally.
The thought that I had with growing up with no mother, and she helped me I would always throughout my life I would think of that as a negative thing, and it would make something bad of myself. But with her telling me that without her presence, they should teach me how to rely on myself, be independent.
Like, she's there for me a lot, all the time. If I do come to me crying or whatever, she sits with me and talks to me. She tries to cheer me up.
About 2 years ago, I lost my son.
Miss Boykins was the very first one that came to me that Mother's Day with the Mother's Day card and with a little token inside that really touched my heart.
With her knowing what I've been through throughout my past, that I could turn it, instead of turning into something negative, to turn it into something positive, to make something better out of myself. And she helped me understand a lot of that.
What I can say that I got from her was that we were not inferior, that we could accomplish the things that we wanted, and we did not have to just settle for anything. And that the only thing that could stop us from doing what we wanted to do was ourselves.